Snoop Dogg goes undercover as a homeless man. What happens next will shock you. The park was quiet that afternoon, the rustling leaves blending with the distant hum of city traffic. On a worn-out blue bench near the fountain sat a man, hood pulled low, his coat frayed at the edges, sneakers mismatched and barely holding together. Beside him, a crumpled brown paper bag. He looked like just another forgotten soul. He didn't lift his head when a police cruiser rolled in, its tires crunching on gravel. Two officers stepped out, scanning the area. Another vagrant, muttered the younger one, Officer Martinez, adjusting his belt. This park's turning into a damn homeless camp. His partner, Officer Higgins, older and world-weary, sighed. Let's see what he's up to, he said, though his tone lacked conviction. Their heavy steps echoed as they approached the bench. The man didn't flinch, eyes fixed on the ground. You can't sit here all day, Martinez snapped. This is a public park, not your living room. The hooded figure finally looked up. His face was shadowed, unreadable. He didn't respond, just reached into the paper bag. Martinez stiffened, his hand instinctively moving toward his baton. Easy, Higgins murmured. Slowly, the man pulled out a sandwich, unwrapping it with careful, deliberate movements. He took a bite, chewing in silence, as if the officers weren't even there. You hear me? Martinez barked, stepping closer. I said you can't just sit here. You got somewhere to be? The man swallowed, his gaze briefly meeting the officers before returning to his meal. I'm not bothering anyone, he said, voice calm but firm. Just eating my lunch. That's not the point, Martinez shot back. People like you make the place look bad. You scare off families. Tourists. Higgins sighed, crossing his arms. What's your name? A pause. Fingers tightened slightly on the sandwich. Calvin, the man said finally. Calvin Broadus. Martinez smirked. Calvin Broadus, huh? What, you a rapper or something? No reaction. The man just took another bite, unfazed. Martinez's patience wore thin. Let me see some ID, he demanded. Without a word, the man pulled out a battered leather wallet and handed it over. Martinez flipped it open, scrutinizing the ID. Looked legit, but didn't match the disheveled figure in front of him. What are you doing here, Broadus? He pressed. Why aren't you at a shelter? I like the fresh air, the man replied simply. That a crime? Higgins shifted uncomfortably. He's not doing anything illegal, he muttered. Martinez wasn't satisfied. Maybe not, he said, eyes narrowing. But we can make it uncomfortable for him. The air crackled with tension. Passers-by started to notice, slowing their steps. Hey! A woman walking her dog hesitated. He's not hurting anyone. Why are you bothering him? Martinez turned, his jaw tightening. Ma'am, this is none of your concern. This is a public park, she shot back. He has just as much right to be here as anyone else. Higgins raised a placating hand. We're just doing our job. Please move along. The woman lingered, her grip tightening on the leash. But after a final glare, she shook her head and walked away, muttering under her breath. The man on the bench watched her go, a flicker of something, amusement, irritation, crossing his face. He set his sandwich down, brushing crumbs off his lap. Am I free to go? He asked, his voice cool but edged with something sharper. You're not under arrest, Higgins admitted, though Martinez shot him a glare. But you might want to find somewhere else to sit. A slow nod. The man's gaze lingered on Martinez for a beat longer than necessary. Then, without a word, he stood, tucking the paper bag under his arm. He was tall. Tall enough for the realization to finally hit. The officers watched in stunned silence as Snoop Dogg, yes, that Snoop Dogg, walked away, leaving them standing there, exposed for exactly what they were. This wasn't just a social experiment. This was a wake-up call. Watch the full encounter and see the truth unfold. like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Snoop Dogg's undercover social experiment exposes police bias. You won't believe their reaction. The officers hadn't noticed it at first. But now, as the hooded man adjusted his coat, a lock of dark hair slipped across his forehead. He was taller than either of them had realized. "Have a nice day," he said, his voice low but pointed. Officer Martinez watched him go, his expression darkening. "Did you see the way he looked at me?" he muttered. "Dude thinks he's better than us." "Let it go," Higgins replied with a weary sigh. "Not worth the paperwork." Snoop walked away, his steps slow, measured. The tension in the air began to fade, but something lingered, an unspoken challenge, a quiet defiance that hadn't been extinguished. Martinez's jaw tightened as he stared after him. "I don't trust him," he said. "There's something off about him." "You don't have to trust him," Higgins replied. "You just have to leave him alone." But Martinez wasn't letting this go. His eyes stayed locked on the figure disappearing down the path, trying to memorize every detail. Meanwhile, Snoop rounded the bend, adjusting his hood. His lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Martinez muttered under his breath. "I'm telling you, there's something off." "Drop it," Higgins said, pinching the bridge of his nose. "He's gone. No harm done." "No harm yet," Martinez shot back. "You saw that ID, looked real, sure, but who carries around a wallet like that dressed like him? And what's he even doing in this park?" Higgins shrugged, already turning back toward the cruiser. "Not our problem," he said. "We're not here to solve riddles. We're here to keep the peace." But Martinez wasn't buying it. The way that guy had spoken was calm, measured, unshaken. The way he'd looked at them, sizing them up in a single glance. The way he'd walked away, tall, deliberate, like a man who knew exactly what he was doing. Martinez didn't like it. Not one bit. "He's hiding something," he muttered, climbing into the cruiser. Higgins sighed but didn't argue. Meanwhile, Snoop had found another bench, deeper in the park, beneath a cluster of ancient oak trees. He leaned back, eyes closed, the crumpled paper bag still beside him. Relaxed, but not idle. He was waiting. It didn't take long. A pair of joggers approached, their sneakers crunching on the gravel. As they passed, their conversation trailed off. The man, a middle-aged guy with a sleek fitness tracker and a permanent look of mild disapproval, nudged his companion. "Should we call someone?" he whispered, just loud enough to be heard. "He looks sketchy." Snoop opened his eyes, his gaze flicking to the joggers before drifting back up to the sky. He said nothing. Didn't react. But the tension thickened. The joggers exchanged uneasy glances before picking up their pace, disappearing down the path. Snoop exhaled slowly. Here we go again. Then came the kids. A group of teenagers on bikes swerved between the trees, their laughter bouncing through the park. One of them spotted Snoop and slowed down, motioning for his friends to follow. "Yo, check this out," the boy grinned, pointing. "You homeless or something?" Snoop didn't react. Just watched him, eyes steady, unreadable. The teenager, encouraged by the silence, leaned in. "What happened, man? You lose your house playing Fortnite?" His friends erupted into laughter. One of them pulled out a phone, holding it up like a camera crew. "Say something for the gram," the kid smirked. "Tell us your life story." Snoop finally spoke. His voice was low, measured. "You should get going," he said. "This isn't a place for games." Something about the way he said it made the kids hesitate. Their laughter faltered. They glanced at each other, suddenly unsure. Then, a police cruiser rolled up nearby. Officer Martinez stepped out first. His eyes immediately locked onto the group. "What's going on here?" he called out, his voice sharp. The teenagers scattered like leaves in the wind, their bikes kicking up dust as they pedaled away. Snoop remained seated, calm, unmoved. Martinez narrowed his eyes. Higgins sighed. "Come on, man. Just let it go." But Martinez wasn't letting anything go. Not yet. Not with him. His paper bag, pulling out the apple and turning it slowly in his hands. A slow, knowing smile crept across his face as he took a deliberate bite, chewing thoughtfully. The sun filtered through the branches, casting dappled shadows over the park, but Snoop wasn't just taking in the scenery, he was thinking. Calculating. Martinez had taken the bait. The officer's suspicion wasn't just about Snoop sitting on a bench. It was deeper than that. A power struggle. A game of control. And Snoop had seen it all before. As he chewed, his gaze drifted toward a group of pigeons pecking at the pavement. They scattered as a kid ran past, his mother calling after him. Life moved on. But Martinez wouldn't. Snoop could feel it. That officer wasn't done with him. Not yet. And that was exactly what he wanted. He leaned back against the bench, stretching his legs out as he tossed a small piece of the apple toward the pigeons, watching them cautiously return. It was only a matter of time before Martinez came looking for him again. And when he did, Snoop would be ready. Snoop Dogg's social experiment pushes police to the breaking point. You won't believe what happens next. The paper bag crinkled as Snoop pulled out the half-eaten sandwich, unwrapping it with slow, deliberate movements. His eyes flicked briefly toward the trees nearby. A man in a gray hoodie stood there, watching. The hooded man stepped forward, cautious but deliberate, stopping just a few feet from the bench. He glanced around, ensuring they weren't being watched. "How's it going?" he asked, voice low. Snoop took a bite, chewing thoughtfully before replying. "About as expected," he said. "They're suspicious, but they haven't figured anything out yet." The man nodded, hands tucked into his pockets. "Think they'll come back?" Snoop's lips curled into a faint smile. "They always do," he said. "Curiosity gets the better of them." The man in the hoodie hesitated. "You sure about this?" "You're pushing them pretty hard." "That's the point," Snoop replied. "I want to see how far they'll go." A jogger nearby paused to tie their shoe, their eyes flicking toward the two men before quickly moving on. The man in the hoodie stepped back, posture tense. "Just be careful," he warned. "If this goes sideways." "It won't," Snoop interrupted, his voice calm but carrying quiet authority. "I've got this." Reluctantly, the man retreated into the trees. Snoop took another bite, gaze returning to the path ahead. He didn't have to wait long. The familiar hum of a police cruiser reached his ears. Martinez was back. The sound of the engine blended with the rustling leaves and distant city noise, but Snoop didn't move. He finished the last bite of his sandwich, the empty paper bag resting neatly beside him. His posture remained relaxed, but his awareness sharpened as the cruiser rolled to a stop. Martinez was out before the car had fully halted, striding toward the bench with purpose. Higgins followed at a slower pace, frustration evident in the slump of his shoulders. "You again," Martinez said, his tone clipped. His gaze flicked to the empty paper bag, then back to Snoop. "Couldn't find another park to loiter in?" Snoop looked up, expression neutral. "Didn't realize sitting on a bench was a crime," he said evenly. "Don't get smart with me," Martinez snapped, his hand resting on his hip. "You're still here, still acting suspicious. I don't know what your game is, but I'm going to find out." Higgins sighed, stepping in. "What are you doing?" he asked his partner, voice low but firm. "We already cleared him." "He's up to something," Martinez insisted, his eyes locked on Snoop. "I can feel it." "That's not how the law works," Higgins shot back, exasperated. "You can't just hassle someone because you feel like it." "Then why hasn't he left?" Martinez challenged. "Normal people don't just hang around like this." Snoop raised an eyebrow. Normal people, he echoed, voice calm but sharp. What exactly does that mean? Martinez's jaw tightened, and he took another step forward. It means people who don't make a habit of sitting around parks waiting for attention. Maybe I just like the view, Snoop replied. Or maybe I don't feel like being rushed out of a public space for no reason. Higgins ran a hand down his face. You're escalating this for nothing, he muttered. Let it go. But Martinez wasn't letting anything go. If he's got nothing to hide, then he won't mind answering a few more questions, Martinez said, voice tense. Snoop tilted his head slightly. What do you want to know? Why this park? Martinez demanded. Why this bench? Do I need a reason? Snoop asked. Didn't realize public spaces came with prerequisites. Martinez's eyes narrowed. You're too calm. Too calculated. People don't just sit like this unless they're planning something. Planning what? Snoop asked, voice steady. A picnic? A peaceful afternoon? You tell me what crime I'm committing, and I'll tell you why I'm here. Higgins stepped forward again, his patience clearly running out. That's enough, he said, tone firm. You've got nothing. Let's move on. But Martinez was done listening. His hand went to his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 12, he said, pressing the button. I need a record check on an individual. Name, Calvin Broadus. ID provided earlier. Snoop raised an eyebrow but said nothing, his expression unreadable as he watched Martinez work. The radio crackled. Copy that, Unit 12. Stand by. Higgins groaned, throwing up his hands. You're making this into something it's not, he muttered. This is going to come back on us. Then he shouldn't have anything to worry about, Martinez retorted. His gaze stayed fixed on Snoop. If he's clean, he's clean. Snoop leaned back on the bench, arms crossed. You're very determined, he said. Martinez's grip on the radio tightened. And you're way too comfortable, he shot back. That makes me think you've done this before. Snoop smiled slightly. Maybe I have, he said. The radio crackled again. Unit 12, no outstanding records found. Subject is clear. Higgins exhaled. There. Satisfied? Martinez didn't answer. His jaw flexed, his frustration barely contained. Snoop unfolded his arms and stood slowly, stretching as if he had all the time in the world. You got what you wanted, he said. Now, am I free to go, or do you need to call in backup for a guy sitting on a bench? Martinez's eyes burned with irritation, but he had nothing left. Fine, he muttered, voice tight. We're done. Snoop nodded, his smile faint but unmistakable. Have a nice day, officer, he said smoothly, turning to walk away. Martinez watched him go, fists clenched at his sides. In the cruiser, Higgins shook his head, starting the engine. You've got to let this stuff go, he said. It's not worth the trouble. Martinez stared out the window, eyes locked on Snoop's retreating figure. It's not about trouble, he muttered. It's about respect. That guy thinks he's untouchable. He's not, Higgins sighed. Let it go. But Martinez couldn't let it go. Because even though there was nothing on Snoop, no warrants, no violations, something about him still didn't sit right. He knew there was more. And he was going to find out. Meanwhile, Snoop reached the edge of the park, adjusting his hood. The faintest smile played on his lips. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Martinez yanked his arm away, his frustration teetering on the edge of control. His eyes burned with something deeper than suspicion. This was personal now. Snoop didn't flinch. He simply sat there, watching, waiting. You think this is funny? Martinez snapped. You think you can just play us like this? Snoop exhaled slowly, shaking his head. I think you don't like that I'm not afraid of you, he said, his voice low and even. And that's got you real uncomfortable. Martinez clenched his jaw so tight his teeth might have cracked. He knew he shouldn't be reacting like this, knew Snoop was baiting him, but he couldn't stop himself. Officer Higgins saw it, too. He stepped in again, his patience officially worn thin. "Enough," he said, his voice carrying an edge of finality. "This isn't going anywhere. We're leaving." Martinez didn't move. Higgins' voice dropped lower. "You're about to cross a line, man." The warning lingered in the air. For a second, it seemed like Martinez might push it further, might let his anger take control. Then, with a sharp inhale through his nose, he stepped back. "This isn't over," he muttered, his voice low and tight. Snoop finally smiled. "I know," he said simply. Martinez turned on his heel and stormed toward the cruiser, slamming the door behind him. Higgins hesitated, glancing at Snoop one last time, as if trying to make sense of what just happened. Snoop just gave him a slow nod, as if to say, "You get it, don't you?" Higgins sighed, rubbing his temple as he slid into the passenger seat. The cruiser pulled away, but Martinez's grip on the wheel was white-knuckled, his mind racing. Something about this guy wasn't right. Something about him was planned. And Martinez wasn't going to stop until he figured out what. Meanwhile, Snoop sat back, letting the city sounds wash over him. He reached into his pocket, rolling the small device between his fingers. Everything was unfolding exactly as he'd expected. This wasn't over. Not even close. As less than you. And guess what, officer? You failed. The weight of Snoop's words hit like a freight train. Martinez's mouth opened, but no words came out. His mind scrambled for a way to regain control of the situation, but the damage was already done. You harassed me. You tried to intimidate me. All because I sat on a bench, Snoop continued, his voice unwavering. And now? Millions of people are watching you do it. Martinez's pulse pounded in his ears. He could already feel the consequences spiraling out of his grasp. This is entrapment, he blurted out, his voice laced with desperation. You set me up. Snoop shook his head slowly, his faint smirk unwavering. Nah, he said. I just gave you the rope. You did the rest yourself. The officer's grip tightened on his baton, but he knew there was nothing he could do. He had played right into Snoop's hands. The realization sank in, deep and bitter. The cruiser's radio crackled. Unit 12, report your status. Martinez exhaled sharply, forcing himself to turn away. He couldn't fix this. He couldn't undo it. Without another word, he strode back to his car, his boots heavy on the pavement. He slammed the door, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Snoop watched him go, his expression unreadable. As the cruiser peeled away, he reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone once more. The stream was still rolling. He glanced at the chat, where thousands of messages flooded in. Unreal. This dude just exposed everything. The system is broken, man. Proof right here. Snoop playing 4D chess while the cops stuck on checkers. Snoop exhaled, the tension in his shoulders finally easing. The game had played out exactly as he expected. And this was just the beginning. He turned off the stream, slipped the phone back into his pocket, and pulled his hood up. Then, with the same unbothered grace he had all day, Snoop stood up, tucked his hands into his coat, and walked away into the heart of the city. The message had been sent. And the world had listened. Snoop Dogg's voice cut through the crisp evening air of Times Square, his words carrying a weight that went beyond the flashing billboards and the hum of city traffic. And now, we have to ask ourselves the hard questions. Do we only treat people with dignity when we think they deserve it? Do we reserve respect for those who can demand it, who have status, power, or influence? Or do we start seeing every human being as inherently worthy, no matter where they sit, no matter what they look like, no matter what we assume about them? The crowd stood still. No one reached for their phones. No one whispered to their neighbor. They just listened. The energy in the air had shifted, the usual chaotic buzz of Times Square replaced by something deeper, reflection, realization. Snoop continued, his voice steady, carrying the weight of a truth that was impossible to ignore. This isn't just about one cop, one park, or one moment. It's about all of us. It's about the choices we make every single day, how we see people, how we treat them. If we really want change, then we have to be willing to look at the truth. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it challenges everything we thought we knew. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, a single clap. Then another. And another. The applause spread like a wave, swelling into something unstoppable. People weren't just clapping for Snoop, they were clapping for the idea that things could be different. That this moment, this conversation, might actually mean something. That they, too, had a role to play in making the world a place where dignity and respect weren't privileges, but rights. But while the crowd celebrated the moment, for Officer Martinez, the reality was far different. His name had become a headline, a cautionary tale attached to a much larger issue. News outlets plastered his image across their screens, dissecting every second of the footage. His career in law enforcement was over, not because of a single mistake, but because of a pattern of choices that had finally caught up to him. For the world, he was just another example of a broken system. For him, it was the collapse of everything he thought he knew about himself. But the conversation didn't stop at outrage. The video became more than just viral content, it became a call to action. Activists seized the momentum, pushing for real policy changes. Journalists debated the ethics of profiling, forcing uncomfortable but necessary discussions. Everyday people, the ones who had never thought twice about these issues, found themselves questioning their own biases. And back in Central Park, the simple wooden bench where it had all started was no longer just a piece of public furniture. It had become a symbol. Over the following days, handwritten notes began appearing, tucked under the bench's edge, left behind by those who had been touched by the story. Some were from people who had faced discrimination firsthand, stories of being overlooked, judged, or mistreated. Others were from those who had merely watched, but had been changed, awakened to something they had never fully understood before. One note, written in careful, slanted handwriting, read, "I saw myself in this story, and I want to change." Another simply said, "We're listening now." A few weeks later, Snoop returned to the park. He didn't announce it, didn't bring cameras or a crowd. He simply stood before the bench, looking down at the collection of folded scraps of paper, each one a tiny testament to a shift in perspective. He reached down, picked up one of the notes, and ran his fingers over the words before gently tucking it back where he found it. Nearby, a young boy, no older than 10, sat swinging his legs on the next bench over, watching him curiously. After a moment, the kid spoke up. "Hey," he said. "You're Snoop Dogg, right?" Snoop turned and smiled. "That's me." The boy hesitated, glancing at the bench, then back at Snoop. "Why'd you do all that?" he finally asked. "I mean, you didn't have to." Snoop glanced around the park. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting long golden streaks across the pavement. Parents pushed strollers, joggers passed by, a street musician strummed a guitar near the fountain. He turned back to the boy, his expression thoughtful. "Because," he said, "sometimes the only way to change the world is to sit down and make people see what they've been missing." The boy seemed to think about that for a moment, his small brow furrowing as he tried to understand the weight of those words. Finally, he nodded. "That makes sense," he said. Snoop chuckled, reaching out to pat the back of the bench. "Yeah," he said. "It does." Then, without another word, he turned and began walking away, his hands tucked into the pockets of his coat. The boy watched him go, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled scrap of paper. He quickly scribbled something down, then hopped off the bench and tucked the note carefully under the wooden slats, just like the others before him. As the wind rustled the leaves and carried the distant sounds of the city through the park, the note fluttered slightly. It read, "Your story matters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." And just like that, the conversation continued.